Welcome to Taylor Fashion if this is your first time here, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back. On today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this vest, so make sure to watch this video till the end. I'm starting off by drafting the pattern of the front piece, and I'm marking 1.5 inch button allowance at the center front. So this is going to be the new center front line, and I'm going to take all my measurements from this point. Starting off with the shoulder width, I took the shoulder width, divided it by 2, and I placed it at the top of the pattern paper from the new center front line. I'm going to bring the shoulder line down by 1.5 inch and connect it to the center front line to form the silhouette of the shoulder. At this point, I'm going to go ahead to measure from the shoulder line down to mark the bust line, the under bust line, the waist line, and the full length. Next, I'm going to go ahead to mark the armhole depth, and you don't want the armhole to be too deep for this style because of the kind of sleeves that we're going to be attaching. And one thing I learned about the armhole depth is that if you're unsure about it, you could use your shoulder width divided by 2. The armhole depth is going to form the chest line, and I just marked that out. Now I'm going to go ahead to mark out the darts, and I'm marking it to be 4 inches away from the new center front line. And I marked that on the bust line, the under bust line, the waistline, and the full length. I went ahead to locate the middle of the armhole, and I connected all those points together. So I'm trying to form a princess dart. Now I'm going to go to the under bust and I took half an inch on each side, but I later changed it to 2 cm. So I took 2 cm on each side of the dart line at the under bust, and I took half an inch on each side of the dart line at the armhole. So by doing this, I'm going to create space for the bust and overall make the vest fit better. So I went ahead to take the round measurements from the center front line, and I feel like at this point I don't even need to say it anymore. So I divided the bust by 4, and I also added a seam allowance of 1.5 inch. And then you know how it is at the under bust, after adding your seam allowance of 1.5 inch, you also have to add that allowance you took at the dart. So I took 4 cm at the dart, which is about 1.5 inch, so I added another 1.5 inch, and then divided the waist by 4, and I took the allowance at the dart, added it before adding my 1.5 inch normal seam allowance. And for the full length, I measured the upper hip measurement, divided by 4, and I just placed that and added my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. At the middle of the armhole, I went in by half an inch, and this is only for the front piece, and I connected that with a curve. Since the two sides of the dart are different, I'm just measuring them to see which one is shorter so I could add to it. So by the time I'm done joining the two sides of the dart together, I don't have one side shorter than the other. So I extended that to fit the measurement on the other side. So since I took half inch on each side of the dart line, the armhole has gotten short by 1 inch. So I'm going to add back that 1 inch to make the armhole the normal length again and connect it to the extension that I made earlier. I went there to create the shape of the neckline, and the width of the neckline is 3.5 inches from the new center front line, and the depth of the neckline is 6.5 inches. So now I'm just going ahead to give this pattern the shape that vests usually have at the bottom. I took 2.5 inches from the center front out, and I took 2 inches from the bottom up. I also took 2.5 inches at the side from the bottom upward. This is final pattern for the front piece. I went ahead to cut it out so I could use this pattern to cut out the pattern for the back. I grabbed another pattern paper for the back piece and I make sure that the center front line is aligned with the center back line because the back piece does not include the buttonhole or the button allowance. So I'm just marking out the measurements that are a bit similar to the front piece, but I brought down the back neckline by 1 inch instead, and then taking every other measurement like the shoulder, the armhole. I am just drawing the line down because the back armhole does not include that ½ inch that we took in for the front armhole, and then I'm taking all the horizontal measurements. And for the full length of the back piece, you can see that I took it from the point that I cut out on the front piece. So the back piece is shorter than the front piece. I went ahead to mark the dart for the back piece, and the dart is 4 inches away from the center back, and it is extending from the bust line up till 1 inch below the waistline. And the dart is 1 inch wide at the under bust line, which is ½ inch on each side of the dart line. I then went ahead to mark the round measurements divided by 4. The only difference is that at the under bust and at the waistline, I included the dart allowance before adding the normal 1.5 inch seam allowance. I also extended the bottom by 1.5 inch at the center back. Now I have my front and back patterns. I went ahead to use the pattern to cut on fabric. I cut out 2 main fabric pieces and 2 lining pieces for both the front pieces, and 1 lining piece and 1 main fabric piece for the back piece. I also included the seam allowances aside for the side seam allowances, which are already included in the pattern, which is 1.5 inches. I use crepe as my main fabric and I attach hairstay to it off camera, and I also use pungent lining. I went ahead to transfer the dart measurements from the back pattern paper to the fabric using pins and then going ahead to mark it. And after doing that, I'll go ahead to sew in the darts for both the main fabric piece and the lining piece. And for the front piece, I just went ahead to join the 2 sides of the main fabric piece and the lining piece by the darts. So this is what I have after sewing in the darts and ironing it out. Then I'm going to go ahead to sew in the neckline of the back piece by placing the lining piece and the main fabric piece front sides facing each other, sewing and then top stitching. That's it for the back piece for now, and on the front piece I'm going to go ahead to separate the main fabric pieces from the lining piece so that I can create the pockets. So I'm going to be drawing the pocket on the front side or the right side of the fabric. The pocket is going to be at the point of the waistline, so I went ahead to measure from the shoulder to the waistline and I marked it out. The pocket is going to be about ½ inch and it is going to be 5 inches wide. So I measured from the dart line towards the center front line 1½ inch, and from the dart line to the sides 3½ inches, making the pocket a total of 5 inches wide. So I used a pencil to draw that out on one side, and this is what I have, and I'm just going to go ahead to do the same thing on the other side, making sure that they are very, very similar, so they have to be siblings. I'm making a single welt pocket, and I need 2 plackets and 1 pocket bag. So this placket is going to be 2 inches in length and it has to be wider than the pocket. So a pocket is 5 inches, so I made it about 7 inches wide, and it is 2 inches in length, although I folded it in 2. So you have to fold the placket in 2 and then place it on the pockets like that. And you also need the pocket bag. The pocket bag is about 4.5 inches on fold, and it is as wide as the placket. So I made sure the length of the pocket does not exceed the length of the vest. So I went ahead to pin the placket on, and I drew the the pattern of the pockets again on the placket. So I'm going to go ahead to sew, and I'm sewing 2 horizontal lines, 1 line up and 1 line down. So I am not going to sew the 2 lines on the side. So I'm done sewing, and you can see that I have just 2 horizontal lines up and down, none on the side. Now I'm going to use my seam ripper to open this up, and I'm going to be making a little triangular cut at the 2 ends. And you really have to cross check at this point, because the moment you start to cut this, there's no going back. You can't say you want to change the position of the pocket after this. So you have to make sure that the pocket is where you want it to be or how you want it to be before you cut it open. After cutting it open, I'm just going to go ahead to arrange it. And arranging it is quite important because you want the bottom placket to be in front, not the top placket in front. Because if the top placket is in front, you won't be able to put your hand in the pocket. So make sure the bottom placket is the one in front of the top placket. So this is what I have after ironing. It's looking very nice and flat. Now I can go ahead to attach the pocket bag. So I'm attaching one side of the pocket bag to the top and the other side of the pocket bag to the bottom. And after doing that, I can go ahead to close the sides and trim off the excess. And for your pocket to look very neat, you need to iron after each step. Now I'm done with the pocket, I can go ahead to continue with the rest of the vest. I brought back the lining pieces, and I'll go ahead to sew the neckline and the center front of the vest, of the front piece. And I'm also going to top stitch. After doing that, here I've already pinned the 2 sides of the front piece together so they don't move about. And I'll go ahead to join the back to the front piece by the shoulder. So I'll place the front side or the right side of the back piece to the right side of the front piece, and then turn the lining piece over and sew. So by doing that, I'm going to get a neat finish on the inside and the outside of the shoulder. I'm going ahead with the sleeves now, and since I'm attaching cap sleeves, I'm marking where I want the cap sleeves to stop, and that is 5 inches for me. So I'm just going to go ahead to notch 5 inches on the armhole on the front and back pieces. After making the notch, I'm going to turn the main fabric piece and the lining piece right side facing each other, and then I can sew from the notch down to the sides and then turn back inside out. So I do that for all 4 points of the armhole, and I just sew down from the notch upwards to the shoulder. After doing that, I went ahead to attach the sleeves. So I lost some clips of me showing you how I made this sleeve, but the good thing is that I have a detailed tutorial on how to make cap sleeves and how to attach it to an armhole neatly on my page, so you can go ahead to check out that video. It's going to be linked in my description box, and I'm going to link it somewhere in this video right now. So after doing that, I just went ahead to continue with the body of the vest by sewing in the bottom of the front and back pieces of the vest. So I placed it right side facing each other, sewed it in, top stitch, ironed, and this is what I have. Now I can go ahead to close the sides and join the front and the back pieces together by the sides using the 1.5 inches seam allowance. So this is how the inside of the finished product is looking like. You can go ahead to weave this so it has a neater finish. And the final thing I did was to create buttonholes and attach my cover button. So I ended up attaching 7 buttonholes, but I think next time I won't make it as much as 7, because when I was done it started looking like too much to me. But this is the final look. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions, and make sure to share this video to someone that might find it helpful. Thank you, and I'm going to see you in my next video.